We're getting to the end of the year. I'm recording this at the end of October. So the question that I'm asking a lot of my clients is, are you ready for 2022? Is your strategy ready? Let's talk about that and more in today's video. Hi there, my name is Ruben and I'm an expert in data, decision making, and of course strategy, which when you look at it, it's just a framework in which decisions are made. So naturally, end of the year, it's a great time to start thinking about strategy, think about 2022, but we're in a bit of an awkward time and companies aren't sure how to think about strategy for next year. So I'm gonna give you a few ideas that you can take back to your team and then make sure that your next year is one of your best years. First, we have to accept where we are, right? Every country, every city is in a slightly different place, but there's some general ideas that we're seeing across most countries. The pandemic is still going on. For the most part, we're starting to move beyond it. We're starting to open back up and get back to some kind of normality. Now, it's not quite what it was before the pandemic, but we are moving on. And there may be restrictions, there may be on and off, there may be mandates, there may be further vaccine boosters, but things are opening back up. We're starting to see sports come back, travel coming back, of course, restaurants, shopping. Generally speaking, we're moving on. Now, there's a small group of people, a small percentage that is not moving on, but the majority, 80, 90% in really most places is moving on. Now, from a business perspective, there's also some things we can look at. There's some supply chain issues which are not really going to resolve themselves for a few months. It doesn't mean it's fatal, but something to keep in mind. Consumer demand is going to be up and down. I think, we're going to the holiday season, so we're likely going to see another uptick as we typically do, and then we'll see how sort of the winter plays out, but we can expect sort of this up and down idea of consumer demand. It was interesting, United, which has done relatively well in the pandemic compared to other airlines, they actually built a team that's looking at some of these factors, the sort of short-term factors of demand, but they actually just accepted that they do not know what demand will look like for travel in the next couple months, in the next few months, so they're simply going to play by ear, so to speak. And that's a great way of thinking about it. You're not really quite sure how things may go up and down, but we can look at factors, we can adjust, we can make some changes. So not so much it's just going to keep growing and growing for the next few years, but we'll deal with things as they come. So based on that, we can now start build strategies. We can start thinking about how to build a strategy. Now, strategy used to be this sort of 5-year thing back in the days of GM and post World War II. Now it's really, you hear about 3-year strategies. I think even that's going away. Generally speaking, I think teams and companies should be looking at 12 months, maybe 18 months at most. And I know you might say, there's some industries that cannot work on a 12-month strategy, but even that's changing. Look at vaccines, a process that took 10 years. It's now, can be done in much less. Now, the COVID-19 vaccine was much faster and went through all these emergency approvals. So vaccines, might not get developed in 1 year, but it's unlikely it's going to take 10 years. You're probably going to see manufacturers be able to develop vaccines in 2 or 3 years with new technology, new processes. So now you can actually start building very short-term strategies of 12 months, even across some of the most difficult industries like medicine. So let's start with this idea that we're going to build a short-term strategy, 12 months, 18 months at most. We want to have a process that's quick. So you don't want to spend 3 months coming up with a 12-month strategy. That's a waste of time. You really want to spend a day. This might be 2 mornings if you do it virtually. There, of course, might be some prep. You might give some of your key executives some questions and things to think about over a couple of weeks to collect some numbers, to collect some information, and then bring it to this session. So when you get together, you really want to come across and get consensus on a few things. First, let's understand the difference between strategy and tactics. Strategy is what we want to do. Tactics is how we're going to do it. So when you get together in that short session, make sure you're differentiating between these two, get an agreement on a handful of things, 2 or 3 areas in your business, in the company, in your team that you would like to improve over the next 12 months. That's your what. And then you can start going deeper into the how. This is how we want to do it. Here's a handful of initiatives that will support this. Here are some of the obstacles that we may run into. And then, of course, here's the accountabilities. And here's how we're going to monitor things. We're going to check in every month, every 2 weeks, every quarter over that 12-month period. And that's really it. There's not a lot of complexity. There's not a lot of moving things that we have to go into this. Remember that we know that demand is going to be uncertain. We know that mandates, restrictions may come back and they may go away. We know all this. So we're simply doing our best to say, this is where we think we're going to go. Here's the things we're going to run into and how we can deal with them. If demand drops, this is what we do. If demand increases beyond what we expect, this is what we do. And then you move on and then you get started. And now we're, end of October. So we're really only a couple months away away from being able to start this. So strategy doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be this elaborate process. It doesn't have to require months and months of research and thinking, because you don't have that, because we're in a fast moving world, and the companies that do really well, like United Airlines, are the ones that are accepting this and simply moving on. They're moving on the things they want to work on and tackle. And that is all I have for today. As always, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, all the things you can do on YouTube. In the description box below, there's a few links. I always mention them. First, the book, The Data Mirage. It looks at how companies can use data to really get insights and make better decisions. Second, there is a link to my newsletter, The Growth Needle, where I share similar ideas, especially around strategy. It's a relevant topic for our times at the end of the year, and you can get that for free at the link. Third, there's a link to my Twitter, where I'm sharing bite-sized ideas on the best way to think about strategy, decisions, data, and really anything else. So you'll find all those 3 links in the description box below. Finally, in the comment section below, let me know how your company is thinking about strategy. What are you doing differently this time? What are you not? And keep in mind, one final point I'll make is, for companies that were in the middle of their strategy when the pandemic hit, you need a new strategy. How could you possibly continue on doing the same thing now, post-pandemic? Even if you're doing really well, if you were in one of those industries that benefited, how could you possibly continue on? Now you may actually be further ahead in your goals than you were before. And if you were in one of those industries that was hard hit, like tourism, then of course you need a new strategy. So this is a great time to come up with a new way, a process that's much faster, that allows you to have a faster feedback loop in your team in how you think about strategy. Until next time, talk soon.